Okay, here we are this morning. I think this should be working. I don't, man, I have a ton of stuff I've been thinking about this morning, and I've been sharing it with some other people, and so I may as well share it here. Let me know if my audio's right. I recorded a conversation with Jess P the other day on non-duality. Jonathan Peugeot had a conversation with this YouTube channel called Telos Bound, which is, I believe it's mainly this guy. Dang, what's his name now? Trey. And then some of his other friends are doing it now, and they had a conversation on uh, the divine feminine or Sophia and darkness and chaos and things that can't be discussed in non-duality. And Peugeot basically said there's things you shouldn't talk about. And then promptly, Jess and I started talking about those things privately. And so we have a conversation about that I'm excited that will come out at some point. I don't really know where. I don't know what channel it's going to come out on. So, but that's not what I was going to talk about this morning. What I was talking about this morning, but it is related to that, is what does it mean to really think well? And think, what does it mean to think? Which I need to go revisit this. I should just do a longer recorded video or series or conversations on thinking. And what does it mean to really think? And not just thinking that you're thinking. Because I think there's a hidden division there and divided thing. It's very psychological. It's like Freudian or Jungian, unconscious and conscious, which is stuff that I like to think about. And so in your thinking, you can be thinking that you're thinking something and not really thinking, or really thinking that you're open to something and not be thinking. So the context for all that thought is that I was listening to PVK's video this morning, so I'm going to read a couple screenshots that I sent a bunch of friends. And it's actually really related to, and I think this is important. I'm using this as an illustration, but I think it's very important for Sam, our friend, our transfigured friend, Sam Tiedemann, and his conversation, or his video that he did as a response to Gavin Ortland about the Trinity and whether or not the Trinity is an accretion. Accretion meaning like something that's not implicitly within the text, but it's an evolution of something from the text. I mean, people who are pro-Trinity would argue that it's in the text, but just not explicit. You know, like people will often say there's no, the word Trinity isn't in the Bible. So is it really there? And then it's just an evolved accretion. I don't even think that accretion means something negative. Let's look it up. Accretion. Here we go. I'll share it. So it is accretion, the process of growth or increase, typically by the gradual accumulation of additional layers of matter. Well, it's not physical. Physicalist. It's just here you go. Don't think about this within physicalist terms, but let's go to astronomy. The coming together and cohesion of stuff under the influence of gravitation to form larger bodies. There you go. Let's go with that. Because guess what? People don't know what gravity is, but we tend to think about it in physicalist terms. But then again, I would reference, let's go here. I would reference this video, which is, okay, what do we have? This is, okay, Rupert Sheldrake, gravity. Yeah, this one, the speed of gravity. Was that it? 7 months ago? Actually, I haven't listened to this yet, which I should. Fields as formal causes. because that's so much of my stuff. That's so much of how I think about things. Even think about Sam again and his white. Think about Aristotle's like teleological cause, or not Aristotle's, Aquinas's, right? Whatever, doesn't matter. And then how does the form of something have the form that it has outside of a mechanistic evolutionary thing, which is actually related to PVK's video, which prompted this talk with my comment. So let's go there. Let's go to PVK. Where are you at, PVK? And let's go to his video. Oh, I probably can't play a lot of this. I'll just read the comment off of here and have it, because it's his members only one. It's this one. Richard Dawkins admits that scientists don't know the origins of life. Okay, related. T-Grog, that's for you, my friend. But let's go look here at the comments. Here we go. No thanks, YouTube TV. Okay, is this still rolling here? Early morning California. PVK, I'm talking about you. This is my comment. Go love it and like and subscribe. Okay, at 23:57, he's quoting, what's the guy's name? Chris, this guy. What's his name? I can't think of it. You know it. This guy. See him? Chrisen? Whatever his name is. What's his name? Where's it at? Why isn't it in here? Whatever. I don't want to play that part though. Vanity watching. Yeah, exactly. So let's go back to my comment. Chrisen, yes. Kissen. What's his first name though? Anyhow. Kissen, what a great name. I would love to hear stories about his childhood growing up with that name. Okay, so he said to Richard Dawkins this, which Speak Life guy, whatever his name is, I forget right now, said is, this is a succinct point. So he said, what it may invalidate is the only thing to know in the universe is the scientific method. And I wrote imagination, memory. And then this quote from Samuel Johnson, which I repeat all the time, but memory is the purveyor of reason, which means memory sets the table for reason. If you can't remember something, you can't apply reason. And I had a little back and forth with T-Grog in the comments about this, because he was saying, because he argued, no, it's the opposite. And I said, no, Tim, you don't understand this. If you don't understand the relations between 2 + 2 = 4, you cannot do math. You cannot reason. You cannot apply deductive reasoning if you don't remember the relations. So I said, if you can't imagine another situation being true, you're not even thinking. You're being dictated to and repeating something outside of yourself, which is basically what Jordan Peterson talks about with ideological possession. When he said, or it's that Luke from New York comment that PVK had in a very old Randos video, which he said, I learned a long time ago to pay attention to what people said when they're not paying attention, which is actually what psychoanalysts do, is you just get to talking when you're not paying attention, when you're not in your ego or your prefrontal cortex, when you're not just like, and Jordan Peterson also says, be very precise in your language. This is what he's talking about too, is only say what you really think. And how do you know what you really think? You have to pay attention to yourself. And so when people aren't paying attention to what they're saying, they'll give you what they really think. They know what they really think. They just don't know that they know. They'll give you the Sunday school answers. And so then I quote this, F. Scott Fitzgerald, the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. Until you can do that, I'm pretty confident you're not even thinking. This is why so many conversations are not truly conversations or dialogos. They are merely zero-sum competition games of winners and losers that are rooted in fear and insecurity. Deep calls to deep. Which is also related to that Tim Keller video that I often reference on how to disagree. If you just type into YouTube, Tim Keller, how to disagree, and I think it's a Gospel Coalition video with Matt Chandler and Michael Horton. It's excellent. And in that, to recap, he says, until you are able to say to someone their position, and their response is not only is that my position, but it's better than I could even say it, you haven't understood them. And then maybe even then, you haven't understood them. Okay, I'm going to bring out one more quote, because I shared this with other people. It's this Viktor Frankl quote, which I just absolutely love. Michael Lady shared this with me, one of the founders of Grail Country here. Where is it? Okay. So he says, love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of his personality, or you could say of his being. No one can become fully aware of the very essence of another human unless he loves him. Whew. By his love, he is enabled to see the essential traits and features in the beloved person. And even more, he sees that which is potential in him, which is not yet actualized, but yet ought to be actualized. Furthermore, by his love, the loving person enables the beloved person to actualize these potentialities. By making him aware of what he can be and of what he should be, he makes these potentialities come true. That's beautiful, and it's true. But I would argue it's not just potentialities, it's not just essential traits and features, it's his ideas. His ideas truly held. Until you can imagine someone else's ideas so much so that you can truly understand what it's like to be them, to hold their position in the same way that they hold it, which I know sounds ridiculous, incredulous. I don't know. I think that's true. And then one of my smart local friends, because I was interacting with them, and this is somebody who grew up Christian and just no longer identifies as being Christian and lived a very very deep Christian life, kind of radical type Christian life. He's also someone who likes Peter Rollins. He asked me in regard to this, which was a great question and a perfect question to relate to this. He asked me, let's go. So he said, it is interesting, and I hope this doesn't offend you, because a few times, if you can even, because, okay, I don't know what that means. Can I even imagine not being a Christian? It feels to me like this isn't something that you would be prepared to entertain, but my feelings are irrelevant because I'm not in your head or body. Seeing as you mentioned this idea, do you feel you've meaningfully imagined what it would be like for you to cease identifying as a Christian? And I said, no. And essentially, what I mean by that is that I don't know how to imagine that. Well, that's not maybe true. I maybe do know how. It's just that I haven't done it. And that is because what you see and hear depends a lot upon where you're standing. It also depends upon the kind of person you are. And because all true knowledge is received, I was going to say had, but that's not true because of being and having, that really great Gregory of Nyssa quote. All true knowledge is received via initiation. And I don't think that it can be had. That's one of my big distinctions between definitional understanding, or what Paul would call emissarian understanding, left-brained understanding, is that you think you can understand things through definition and language per se, but you can't, because the relation is deeper than the relata. So, what it would take for me to properly imagine not being a Christian is what I'd have to do is probably something like Peter Rollins' Atheism for Lent. And even then, I don't know to what degree I'm really capable of that, but that would be the only way to do it. I would have to essentially do a practice where I behaved as an atheist. I actively behaved as an atheist, and I would have to stop doing Christian practices. Which largely I think is impossible to do in this world because of what Tom Holland talks about. But in as much as you were able, you'd have to stop doing those things, and then you could maybe get close to imagining it. And why haven't I done that? Because I think the most succinct answer is because I don't want to. And nice, William. I spent 2022 not being a Christian, not just imagining it. But you had to imagine it first, correct? See, I think that's the thing. People think that this isn't necessarily willful, but I think it could be willful. I think sometimes people unwillfully go through imagining not being a Christian, And that's a kind of deconstruction where all of a sudden they find themselves not believing, but they want to believe. But what I'm talking about is you could willfully imagine not being a Christian, even though you still want to believe, and you may find yourself not believing, perhaps. But I think that's probably the only way to really imagine it. But me, interestingly enough, for all those people that think I'm anti-rational and anti-propositional, I very often for as woo as I am, I like to stay in the realm of the intellectual. And for me, it's something like relational ontology. I just cannot see a way around relational ontology. It makes zero sense to me rationally. So that's a lot of stuff that I was talking about. And man, there's a lot of, I don't know how much time I have this morning. Probably not a lot, because I have to do some things with my kids after a little while. And so I want to open this up a little earlier and go read through comments, because I'm just going to leave it at that, because I could keep riffing, because I am a riffin' griffin. Do you know what a griffin is? All right, here we go. There's the StreamYard link. And I'm going to go and look at some comments. Dolly, good to see you. Lynn, Peter, Ron, Anthony, Cassandra, hello. PVK is here, as I've already mentioned, or he was. Neil, my friend. Rationalizing isn't thinking. I agree. Yeah, I very agree. Parson says, even Dawkins now says that there's an immortal, which is the genes. He has found his maps of meaning. But that's just... I don't understand the materialist, physicalist paradigm, because keep following it down. It's that Indy Wilson thing that I talk about from Notes of the Tilt-A-Whirl. Space. What is between the things that you can name and see and measure? Space, relation. And then what is behind that? An apophatic, ineffable medium that even allows you to see the things. And what is all this? This is reasoning. I'm reasoning with you that substance ontology makes no sense. But like I also said to some friends, you can't reason with a rationalist that rationalism is irrational. So, all right. Pseudo-history. We evolved from trees, snakes, and birds. Live in trees, monkeys swinging from them. Okay, cool. Maxine May says, can you please go into more depth about your understanding of knowledge initiation? By the way, this is Maxine, if you would, I would love to know, because you came up somehow. I don't know how you came up. Somehow in the magic of YouTube, you came up, and I found your channel, which you're a singer. Go check her out. She's a pretty good singer, I think. I need to go check out your channel again. I've been busy, but and musician. But anyhow, I'd love to know how you ended up here, like how you found me or this little corner of the internet, all that kind of stuff. One of my favorite things about this little corner of the internet, and Neil saw this and named this before I was even aware of it, by the way, is that this is the evangelical in me. I love bringing new people into communion, whatever you want to say. I love leaving the 99 for the one. And that isn't to say this is like some salvation project. I mean, it is probably, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. I think that it is. And MJ would obviously disagree with me, but okay. Can you go into more depth about your understanding of knowledge by initiation? Yeah. Well, what I would say, Maxine, is that, again, one of my favorite C.S. Lewis quotes, that is a icon, it's a portal into the way that I understand everything, is this line from his book, The Magician's Nephew. It's just this passing phrase, which is why those books are so good. Like Sam Tiedemann and my friend Tripp and I have been going back and forth about a perennial conversation in this little corner, which is Tolkien versus Lewis. And Sam has been reading the Chronicles of Narnia to his kids, and in a lot of ways, he's just like, these books aren't that great. And I understand his points, but Lewis is one of those authors that the more you go into him, the more you start to understand. Again, this is related to initiation. The more you go into Lewis, the more you read him, the more you are initiated by him, the more that you commune with him and his work, you'll see depths upon depths and things that initially didn't make sense to you and seemed out of place um, or not thought out or unintentional or flimsy and awkward or something. All of a sudden you'll start to see, oh, that's what he was doing. I didn't see that right away because Lewis is a flippin' genius. So anyhow, all of that is related to what I mean by initiation. But also Lewis's line from that book is, what you see and hear depends a lot upon where you're standing. It also depends upon the kind of person you are. So if you don't initiate in something wherever you're standing, which also forms the kind of person you are, you're unable to understand something. So like, for example, if you don't place yourself in a place where you can understand another language, for example, hey, what up, Tim?
So,
If you don't place yourself in a place where you can understand another language or mathematics or, chemistry or whatever, you won't understand it. You won't have a proper knowledge of it. It's a one last thing, and then I want to hear what you have to say, Tim, and we can look at comments or whatever. But there's a great Jack London book called Seawolf that I read in my book club, and my son has read a lot. And it brilliantly, I mean, it's a great story, but it brilliantly articulates this point about how there's the main character is this, I forget his name, but he's essentially this fairly aristocratic, well brought up, pedigreed intellectual who's read many, many books in his life. And he's going on a voyage from Europe to the US, I think. And the ship crashes and he's out to sea. And then he's rescued by this other ship who's captained by this guy whose nickname is the Sea Wolf. And this guy's kind of a monster. Um, and and so it's a relationship of their whole story. But basically, this guy's like no free board, and he's like, "You're going to work." And so he puts this kid to work, and basically, this person realizes that all the things that they thought they knew from books, they didn't know, and he had to learn through initiation, through being in the world, what true knowledge really was. Anyhow, hey, Tim, what's up?
going on? I wasn't really listening to the beginning, so I can't wax poetic on whatever you were talking about.
You can do your own waxing of poetry.
I'm in a mood, dude. I'm
I'm in a mood.
foul mood.
We can talk about that. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. That's what these live streams are about. If I didn't want to just have them go like this, I guess I would do a recorded video. But I'm not disciplined. I'm not structured enough to do that at this point in my life. So whatever.
Yeah, like you know how have you heard a phrase of like you don't lie to your lawyer, you don't lie to your doctor, kind of thing?
I've never heard that, but I can
Uh,
try.
I I can't remember exactly what the aphorism is, but there's some clever, or there's probably a group of clever sayings that have arisen over the years, and the spirit is that like everybody tells the truth, but they really tell the truth to their doctor and their lawyer. You know what I mean? Or it's something like always tell the truth, but actually tell the truth when you're talking to your doctor or your lawyer. And
Yeah.
the sort of meta spirit to that is that there's a bifurcation in our social reality that states that it's okay to lie. It's a sort of general, like what we consider to be um, the iceberg beneath the water is like mostly a lie. But like when it really matters, like when it comes down to your survival, make sure you tell the truth. Otherwise, just feel free to lie.
Right. I
And
think you mean the opposite of the iceberg, right? What is above the water is mostly a lie.
well, I chose the iceberg because it's like I'm not exactly sure what's above the water and what's beneath. Like what we think we know is beneath
Yeah.
the water is not.
No, it's the other way, I think.
Well,
At
it's
least
like
in Polanyi terms.
Well, I mean, in the spirit of the metaphor, we don't know what's beneath the water, but we
Yes.
do know that what's beneath the water is way bigger than
Yeah.
what is above the water.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so what we can't see is bigger than what we do see.
Yes.
And um
Absolutely.
but like most social interactions, or like, when I see a company put out a press release, or I see the White House, put out a press release, or even like I have a I in college, I didn't learn everything I was supposed to learn, but I got this unbelievably strong, almost like Pentecostal outpouring, like realization that like if the information is in a book and it's not a textbook and it's been published in, say, the last 40 years, it's almost certainly not true. Almost certainly not true. And and in college, like I was kind of disillusioned by that, and I kind of stopped reading books. And I recently like
Hmm.
took a foray back into books, and like somebody gave me a Malcolm Gladwell.
Hmm.
It None of it's true. Like it's um it's crazy how we just like let people just continuously publish stuff that's like, I mean, the flavor of the day right now is Andrew Huberman, and
Mm.
if you like look deep into people investigating the things that he claims, like there's an expert coffee guy on YouTube that did Andrew Huberman's coffee routine or whatever. He was like, this is the worst way to make coffee imaginable. Like this guy doesn't
Did
know.
he say put it in your shoe and dump toilet water on it?
I think it was something like consider me to be some sort of idol and give me lots of money and praise and adulation, listen to everything I say.
That makes good coffee?
I mean, that's the game, right? It doesn't matter that he's a scientist or that he's smart. It's like he's an attractive middle-aged man, which is like the sexiest thing
Ooh.
on planet Earth, right?
Mm.
Who's articulate, and it's just like, I just want to give you everything that I have, because I just, like it's just like Shane Gillis. Like Shane Gillis is a fucking loser hack, right? Like he's a fucking loser, right? He calls his dad by his first name. Like that's the most disrespectful thing you could possibly do. Not just to your dad, but to your entire family. It's like I don't respect anything about this person, right? And like the conservative right is like, this is our new idol, this is our avatar. It's like, when will you guys ever learn? Like this, like if you continue to prop up losers, your entire endeavor is going to lose, like, but again, it's like this is the truth and this is what we don't talk about, right? Like for me to continue to be successful, employed, laid, whatever, I have to play the game. I have to pretend like this is all fine. And, you know, like,
I actually don't think that that's true. I think, well, I mean, you have to play this game to do that. I mean, my general perspective is that as a rule, and Job is the exception to this rule, by the way, but well, damn it, I just was gonna go distract myself. But like, I think that when you truly integrate yourself and become honest and become who you're supposed to be, I think most of those things will naturally fall into place, which is kind of this is this is funny because that's what Job is about a little bit, is that's what Job's three friends say to him. Like this is the proverbial reality, which is what will generally happen. Like if you sort your life out, right? Things will happen for you the way they're supposed to. And that's Jordan Peterson, right? Like if you stop victim blaming yourself and saying the whole world is against you and clean your room and sort your shit out, the world will rise up to meet you and shit will work for you. But then you have Job, right? Who was that and did all that, and it all went to hell. So then you have to ask the story of what his Job is about, which I love. Um, but I do think that's largely true. I I think there are what would you call them, like grifters and charlatans and shills and people who play the game who find, I don't know, some degree of success and financial success. But I would say all of that's kind of fleeting, right? Because that's a general story of like when the money dries up or the success dries up or whatever, everybody leaves you, right? Well, that's because those people don't really give a shit about you, right? So that's like the fake success. I'm talking about the kind of success that comes from really integrating yourself where, like, ride or die type people, which could be a wife, could be friends, could be whatever.
Like, um, I don't know.
Parsons also, how would you know? How would you know if Huberman is more jacked than me? I mean, he is, but
Luke,
per se.
no man compares to your pure union of masculine and feminine traits.
Nothing compares to you.
Yeah, I just think that like, um, I'm really frustrated that like I want to find a group of people that sort of agree that like we're not going to murder, we're not going to steal, we're not going to commit fraud and sort of deleterious accounting. We're not going to hoard, we're not going to waste, right? We're not going to be promiscuous and lewd, but we're not going to be mean, judgmental, or cruel. And let's just go from there, right? And
That's
unfortunately,
Christianity, right? That's just Christians, right?
yeah, unfortunately, those people that align on those, have been convinced that they have to say they believe in nonsense to adhere to, and like, what a fucking lie. Like, you have been lied to, right? If you think that a pastor is not a loser, right? Because a loser is someone that mooches off of others, doesn't have a job, and tells others what to do, right? But that's
Ooh.
but that's what a pastor is.
For those who
And
have ears to hear, PVK.
and so like, why do we trick ourselves? Like, why do we lower the standards or shift the goalposts when it's convenient? Like when it obviously causes us pain and suffering time and time and time again. Like Vivek Ramaswamy was a great candidate and none of you supported him.
I
Like,
don't know anything about him.
why? Because he hasn't been anointed by the Lord like Donald J. Trump. Like I don't like
Did he have his ear shot?
I'm
Did
saying
he?
that like all those things that I laid out that I want to find a community of people to live by, like live by those rules. I won't be like I I won't I won't bend the knee to any religion. I won't like I I almost can't pretend like it's okay that you all do. Like that's what's so frustrating because I don't want to go in the war. I don't want to go to the Portland Chop or Baltimore or DC and get shot or whatever. Like I don't want to live in that world either. So it's like it's very frustrating for me to think like fuck, like I spent all this time being reasonable and rational and I want to live a meaningful life, but the people that I seem to align on these things are on some bullshit.
Yeah. Well, so to relate to you, I think that it's hard. What that makes me think of, and it's related to this, is I've been thinking a lot about Jordan Hall lately, and he had a conversation with Benjamin Boyce that was very good. And then, because he's this whatever smart tech guy that all these people respect and whatever, because he's super smart and successful in life and whatever. And then he became a Christian, right? And so a lot of Christians, self-identifying Christians, which is what this whole early thing was. Everything I said in the beginning is about all this, because like I don't really care that much. I mean, I don't value self-identity that much. But he found this community, right, when he became a Christian, because he basically came to understand, like, what's up, David? Like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel looking for the religion that's not the religion or whatever. I'm just going to find the healthiest place that I can and try to plug in there, despite all its warts. And he's spoken about that a lot of different times. So to your point, I kind of don't know how he did that, because the kind of church that he's going to, as far as I know, every one of those that I've been to is confessionalist, which demands that you say certain things that you may or may not believe, right? And is usually full of a bunch of institutional hypocrisy and lies, to your points. But he seems to have found the exception to that rule that's not like that. Because maybe it's just the fact that none of them in his church can understand anything that he's saying. Maybe that's part of it. That he can just talk at the level that he's talking about, that we're just like, I don't know. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, he does, in as much as I know, he affirms classic Christian theology, but he's talking about it at a level that most lay people and probably his pastors, I mean, I don't know, I have no idea what he's talking about. Because that's been my experience throughout most of my life, is I've been wanting to talk about relational ontology and why I have problems with this point of your confession and this point of your statement of faith and this. And I think really, I don't think most of the people who I had church problems with understood anything that I was talking about, which harkens back to my earlier points. Like,
All right.
they're not even really thinking.
Here's the way I relate to that, right? I have been told that Kamala Harris is an expert on geopolitical issues, right? But when I listen to her speak, I find it to be incomprehensible, right? Now, I've been told that that's because she's stupid and a liar, right? And so that primes me to think, okay, a bunch of people are seemingly pretending that she's saying something comprehensible.
Yeah.
But I now know that this is all just a charade and a lie, right? Cut to Jordan Hall. A man is standing up saying incomprehensible things to an audience of people that are seemingly, eating it up, right? So, I'm not going to steal from Peter to pay Paul here, but let's call a spade a spade. Birds of a feather flock together, right?
Yeah.
As a reasonable, rational person, I have to assume that Kamala Harris and Jordan Hall are doing something very similar, or something very similar is occurring here.
Right.
Well, maybe
it's one of the images that's connected with the wise man, though, which is like your Yoda, right? Where they seem like they're an idiot, that they're just kind of playing around, but they're actually doing stuff. So this does complicate things, because, yeah, some people who are just saying ridiculous things are ridiculous. And sometimes, what's the quote Jesus says? I will say secret things. Like, it'll sometimes he just gets up in front of a whole group of people who are so excited to hear him speak. And he says, guys planting seeds, some lands on good, some on bad. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. And everyone just goes, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Here, I want to play this, because I actually think, so to your point, you were talking about Kamala Harris, right? I missed that little piece.
Yeah.
So, like, when people talk about her word salad stuff, and there's that frequent thing that she says, when I listen to that, I'm just like, I actually think it's kind of brilliant. And that most people don't understand what she's talking about. But this maybe is not the thing, but let's just do it for fun. Okay. I think this will probably be it. Let's try to play it with my slow internet.
Dude, are you on broadband?
I think it's very important, as you have heard from so many incredible leaders, for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past, but the future.
That, I completely fucking agree with her.
Yo,
So
get her on with Jonathan Pajot. They would have an epic conversation.
who was the person? One of the candidates the last time they actually had them debate was it Marianne Williamson, who actually is a guru type person who like sells books related to The Secret and whatnot.
Who is this? Say that again.
There was a woman who was up against, like, when they were actually, it was everyone debating, like it was Joe and it was Kamala and Tulsi Gabbard was up there. I think her name is Marianne Williamson, and she is a like self-help but like semi-occultish guru person that was actually running for president.
Mm.
And I wonder to what extent they're like, let's get a little bit of that. Yeah, here.
Marianne
People are
Williamson.
remembering.
So let's play. So Jason, because I love Jason, I want to pull this up, and he's been talking about Veep for forever, which this is Veep. So I want to play this. Okay, let's go one more thing, and then we'll stop playing clips. Or maybe we won't.
She always runs for president.
Sorry about my internet. I do theoretically have good internet.
Turning out of politics, the Julia Louis-Dreyfus HBO series Veep is enjoying a resurgence given its uncanny similarities with the rise of Kamala Harris to the top of the presidential ticket. Now we're speaking with one of the show stars about life imitating art.
It's Veep versus Veep. There's no denying the striking similarities between the real-life Veep, Kamala Harris, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character, Selena Meyer, in the HBO political satire Veep.
Obesity is a serious disease, and it needs to be taken seriously.
We got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously.
Words have many meanings, and sometimes instead of conveying their meaning, they can suggest other meanings.
When we talk about the children of the community, they are the children of the community.
I think it's still relevant.
I spoke to Matt Walsh, who played the Veep's press secretary on the critically acclaimed show.
I just okay. I don't want to play Matt Walsh clips. Not a fan of the way that you behave in the world, sir, but we can continue.
Which won 17 Emmys before ending its run in 2019.
One of the things that made the show great from the very beginning is
What is the point of this?
honest and ruthlessly mean. I think that's sort of matching the current climate.
The show, streaming on Max, is seeing a 350.
Okay, whatever. I think it is funny that. So what I would say to that, because I love Jason. Okay, listen, and this is the relational ontology space where persons are primary to ideas. I'm a big fan of Jason. He's a close friend of mine. He tells me to play that clip. I'm going to play that clip. What is the point of it? I think that his point is just that Veep, which is a show mocking politics, it's like life imitating art or something, you know, but interestingly, they're mocking it. I think, like, I like the stuff they're saying, but that's pretty on brand for me.
I'd like to go back a second.
Okay.
Because that's one of the reasons why I jumped on was something that Tim said. It's Tim, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that I went to a church for a period of time where every single pastor had to have a day job. And if they weren't given, like, they weren't paid by the church. And essentially it felt like something that you were saying. You had to be established within your own life as respectable, separate from the church work, in order to be considered someone that people would look up to. Like, I don't want, because you were, I think, talking about the possibility of free riders and whatnot, where there'd be people where it's just like, who's that guy?
Yeah, it's just an example. I was just using it as an example of, like, you know, take two people exactly the same in almost every characteristic, but apply a religious lens to one of them, and they essentially become the opposite thing of, you know, like, take this jobless loser that tells everybody what to do and, you know, expects the community to pay for their every need, right? That is completely unacceptable in every context except for pastor. And like I don't think it's really novel. Like it's obvious that like this sort of spirit then leads to, well, pastors don't have to follow certain laws. You know, they don't have to treat children the same way that everyone else treats children. And it's like really obvious that that happens, and like you can put a pretty quick stop to it, but it would cause the entire big C church to fall apart. And that's why I brought it up in the context of my original point, which is like, I would love to be in a community with people that don't murder, don't steal, don't commit fraud, aren't cruel, don't waste, don't hoard, right? But unfortunately, like,
I know what you mean. It's like there's a bunch of youth pastors who, if there wasn't such a position as youth pastor, would be the guy working at laser tag when he's 38.
Exactly.
Like is this the person that we want people looking up to? I get what you mean.
Yeah, and I don't want to get distracted by that specific anecdotal point. I want to stay on this sort of 30,000 foot view of why, you know, to participate in a community that adheres to the very basic things that I think are very basic that I laid out. Why would I then have to engage in things that we all agree by the time we're like 15 or 16 are delusional, harmful, malicious, toxic, and diseased?
So Tim, this is the distinction I like to make between bodies and institutions and authority and power. The structures you're all talking about are rooted in traditional institutions that I think are mediated and premised on the written word, and what they mainly are, even though authority and power work back and forth, is they're mainly systems of power and coercion and control. But that doesn't negate true authority. You just have to find a body that has true authority, where you want to willingly submit to a leader who has genuine authority because it's manifest in their life. Not somebody who just has been given a label by some accreditation that has no symbolic reality to the world.
I wanted to say a few things, but Tim, the first thing I would say is that everything you're saying is true. Everything you're saying is true. And I think to bring it to a little bit more of an abstract level, as I see Western civilization, you always had at least the illusion that virtue was tied to hierarchy or significance in the world. You always had that illusion that, you know, the good people were rising in the hierarchy because they were good and competent, and those two things were coupled. And I think what happened with boomerality, starting in post-World War II, we had even the illusion of virtue decoupled from, let's say, masculine hierarchies of competence. So someone like Donald Trump or Elon Musk, they no longer need to pretend that they're virtuous, because basically enough of the veil has fallen. Like what you're describing is the truth of postmodernism. It's the truth. Like everyone is sinful. Everyone. And if you look deep enough, many people are really sinful and full of it. And that's the truth of postmodernism that is successfully unraveling the institutions around us, because they're right. The institutions are corrupt, and the people who have risen in those institutions are not rising purely from competence, let's say, and competence paired with virtue. And so I'll just share one anecdote. So when I was converting I had a religious experience, and I decided I'm submitting myself to, or beginning to submit myself to the Catholic tradition. And I think of it more as submitting myself to a tradition rather than a person. And that's really important, actually, that I submit myself to the spirit of the thing. But it was interesting to me that despite my enlightenment, oh, I see the light of Christ, despite all that, I was still in absolute darkness, depression. I was still like even after that, like a year into that, I was worse than when I started. Like I was actually like really down. Now part of it was that maybe it just took enough time to mourn the death of my brother, but it wasn't enough to simply subordinate myself to a religious tradition. And I thought it would be. And the thing that actually I won't say this is the only thing, because maybe time had something to do with it, but the thing that definitely had a contributing factor is I had to rediscover what I find beautiful again, or what I really love. Like I went back to my earliest childhood like loves, the things I loved like most deeply in my childhood. And to be honest, it was video games, and it was certain types of games. And I started, well, I had this crazy story in my mind, and I started writing it. And as I was like a quarter of the way through the story, I'm like, kids don't read stories anymore. Not even kids, adults don't read stories anymore. And I was like, oh, this is best done as a video game. And I was like, oh crap, I failed out of computer science in college. My father was a computer science guy. I'm not good at syntax, language, logic. Logic I'm okay at, but I'm like, I'm gonna fail at that too. Then COVID hit, and I finished my story, and I had nothing better to do at home. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna see if I can figure out video game stuff, because I had nothing better to do. But that was enough. So what I would say is, like, what is the thing in your life ever that has brought you the most joy? And that's a seed, that's something that uh, might point the way out. And then that, honestly, and I can't tell you the world isn't as you describe it. But I also think that we are in desperate need of people with your particular, call it as it is, mindset. Um, and I mean that both in TLC and the world at large. And really, because there's so few people that are willing to do that. Anyway, that's all.
I liked it. When can we play this game? Is this
Oh, I've failed at making game 3 times so far. So now I'm on attempt 4, I would say. Yeah. It's going
good.
well so far, but I've
That's
learned
good.
to keep my expectations in check. And I've also, here's another thing. I've learned that the more I talk about the thing, the less I want to do the thing.
Yeah.
And so I do my darndest not to actually talk about it. But I wanted to share, like, the one I did find it really interesting that my faith alone was insufficient. It was almost like the 12th step of AA. Like, it was insufficient to just want to be good and virtuous. I had to, like, do something. I had to make use of whatever
Yeah.
talent I had. Yeah.
I helped someone I edited my friend's novel, and he thought that the process of writing a novel is when you sit down, you write the thing, and here it is. Now everyone read it. Isn't it great? And it was like, no. And it was, I think, 7 years of us editing it, of us like breaking it apart, doing it again and again and again before it actually came out the way that it needed to come out. And now I have a copy of it right beside me. Like, great stuff. But it was, when we thought it was complete, it was like, no, there's much more. I understand why people don't finish this. And I couldn't write a novel. I could only help my friend do his. Jason is saying, I am super tempted to get on, but I would react poorly. And right now I'm not in a place for it.
You have any thoughts, Tim?
Yeah, oftentimes when I get a response like that, I wonder if I, like when I communicated what I did, right? There was something inside that I wanted to sort of articulate, but you never quite do it perfectly. And so sometimes I wonder, like, how did the other person hear what I said? Um, and sometimes, I think maybe I don't know exactly how to talk about the color or the shape of the exact thoughts. Like, they're so elusive. Um, kind of like the distinction I made about Kamala Harris or Jordan Hall. Like, the point I was trying to make was that I don't actually know the truth. All I only have these very crude tools and razors to go about, almost like antennae to sense the world around me, right? And I have a pretty good, the argument I was making was like I have pretty good evidence to suggest that this one person is sort of a fraud, but unfortunately, it falls into the exact same, if I use those categories with this person, they also come out of the calculator a fraud. And so, like, I guess I guess the Luke going to the YouTube videos or whatever, it just felt like we were just kind of moving on. And I don't think, the conversation now is like turned over 3 or 4 times. I can't even like get myself back into this state, to the original, like I haven't kept track, I guess is what I'm saying, of like where the conversation has gone.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning.
Morning.
I just jumped on because something came to my mind that I thought I would read. It was a Substack that Yevgeny Terekin wrote the other day, and it's funny because it's been tied into a bunch of synchronicities. You know how that is when you start thinking about something, and then the next day someone writes a Substack about the same thing, and when those kinds of things happen, I just have to pay attention. And now you're talking about something that I think you were talking about authority, and that's what prompted it in my mind. It's not very long enough. I'll just read it really quickly. It's called Sell Cleverness by Bewilderment, the Path of the True Teacher. They say there are 3 types of teachers, roughly speaking. The first one is authoritarian. The teacher comes into the classroom and positions himself as a giant, looking down upon the students. He is big and they are small. He is too big to be ignored. The second one is the authority destroyer. The teacher comes into the classroom and lowers himself to the level of the students, often using baby talk. I'm just like you and don't know anything. Help me figure it out. He is too little to be noticed. The third type comes in with a mountain. He doesn't draw attention to himself. He draws attention to the mountain. The mountain is so big and beautiful that he forgets about himself and talks about the mountain all the time. The students can't help but notice the mountain. They see it in his eyes, in his walk, in his talk. The mountain is too big and beautiful to be ignored. This teacher becomes an authority. An authority doesn't push anything on the students. He's not coercing them to learn either. He is a witness to the true source, a witness to the mountain, a true authority, and someone who reveals something big and beautiful that makes life worth living. Such people don't teach, they show. They don't elucidate, they amaze and confound. They don't make things clear, they make things astounding. There is a distant etymological connection between the words maze and amazement. The word maze comes from Middle English mazen, which means to confound or confuse. To amaze someone means to put them in a maze, make them bewildered, confounded, even foolish. The Old Norse maza means to chatter like a fool. A true authority is contagiously bewildered. They show something about the world that makes it more mysterious. True authorities shine with a borrowed light. The light is not their own. It comes from the mountain they carry with them. They give us only true enlightenment. The mystery of borrowed light. Encountering such people makes you realize that true knowledge is bewilderment. As Jalaluddin Rumi said, sell cleverness and buy bewilderment. They guide you into a maze where you are constantly amazed. You realize you are a fool and don't know anything. But you are infinitely happy to explore this maze and feel initiated into mysteries beyond comprehension. You discover the mountain too. You look up in total amazement and become a witness. The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. Jesus. Oh no, Tim left.
David, you're muted.
He just said he had to go in the private chat. No, that was an
did
excellent reading. It was an excellent reading. I've definitely spoken about this before. I directed a youth company production of a Shakespeare play, and
Right.
a ton of what my job was to explain how this stuff was great, like to get people excited to see the beauty, to see the it's a comedy as well, to be able to know how the things were funny, to see something that on first glance, first time over, they couldn't even understand what the words mean, to then getting to a level of understanding where they will burst out laughing because of how true it is.
Oh, hi, Luke.
Hey guys, my sound is maybe terrible because my computer speaker is dying.
It's good.
Real quick, I got to drop because I'm meeting Noah, President Foxman, in person in 20, 30 minutes. But yeah, and unfortunately, I can't come to Northwestuary next week.
You're not
already.
You're still in Vancouver, Neil?
Yeah. So I already had this trip planned to visit a friend here for a while in Northwestuary, and I'd taken so much other vacation time. I'm like, oh no, I can't swing it. So I'm a little bit saddened, but definitely next year, whatever we're doing, I'll make plans. So
I'm gonna leave at the same time too, because why not?
Whoa.
Oh, great.
David, we got to have a conversation at some point, but I'm a patient man. So
well, I'm gonna have to go
okay.
too. So this is just this is maybe just the end, unless Sherry wants to riff. But I was gonna say about Tim. I think so. I'm friends with Tim. I don't keep up with him a ton because virtual relationships are they pop in and out a little bit. I gotta help my daughter. But what I would say is I think this. I do love Tim. I think he's a great guy. I do think he's often sad. But I think even in this video or in this live stream, what I think Tim wants, and Tim, if you're still here, forgive me if you're listening, I think you want people to join you in your sadness and your misery. And I think when people don't do that in the way that you want, it makes you kind of more sad. And, there's maybe a time and a place for that. I don't know that this live stream is the place to commiserate. Maybe. Sometimes it is. But I don't, there's only one way that I often think about it, and this will kind of be my last word, I think about it as the there's this book that I like quite a bit, but it's The Unbearable Lightness of Being. And within that is one of those paradoxical aphorisms and koans of, I think what life should be is a balance between levity and gravity. And for everything for every time there's a season, but I've had relationships in my life where people have gone through things where it's just like, if you're just sad and dark all the time, you're going to be unbearable for most people. It's just a pretty hard thing. And maybe you can't help that, but then I would, it's, you almost can't insist and demand on people. Should everyone meet you where you're at? Yes. But to insist upon it and to be sad when people don't is to externalize your agency to the point of where your misery is going to be a certitude. So that's what I would
Are
say.
you leaving? Are you leaving now?
Yes, because I have someone here who's waiting for me to do their hair.
Well, I can stay on for a little longer if
All
anybody
right.
else wants
Well,
to join.
anyhow, we'll see you later.
Bye, Luke.
Bye.
I just dropped another link if anybody wants to jump in. That Sam, that Substack I put in the chat is The Philosophy of Language, and it's written by Yevgeny Terekin or Eugene Terekin. He is an Inkling scholar, and he is doing translation. He's Russian, and he's doing translation work, translating the Inklings into Russian. So, yeah. I'm trying not to take it personally that when I jumped in here, everybody left. Oh my goodness. Well, oh, Nico's jumping in. William, this was what I was thinking about when I was listening to Tim, and I don't know. There's a thing about sadnesses that they're hard to bear, especially somebody else's sadness, because we can't enter into it. Sadness is really personal. We can often rejoice with one another, but it's hard to be sad with one another, unless of course it's a grieving kind of sadness, like around the death of a loved one or whatever. And I've actually been experiencing some sadness in my own life of late, and I decided, I mean, I've done this without Rilke's help in the past, but having read Rilke, I've decided to take some of his advice more literally, and I started to explore the sadness, because the sadness it's not something that comes from your head. It's something that comes from your heart. And the heart is, for me, it's like the root of our being, right? It's the part of us that is in the ground of being. And of course, roots are widespread, and they move out, a distance from the plant itself. And so it's hard for us to discern where that sadness is coming from. But ultimately, I think what the sadness indicates is that we hope for something. That's what I think. We're hoping for something, and that something isn't coming about, or it's not appearing, or it doesn't seem within our grasp. But we often don't know what we're hoping for. At least I'm speaking for myself. We don't often know what it is that we hope for. And so when we explore the sadness, we can try at least to understand what it is that we're hoping for. And then with our reasonable, rational mind, we can decide whether or not that thing is actually reasonable. It's like, wait a minute. I remember one time I wrote out a list, and please do not leave me in here by myself, okay? Because I just hate being in here by myself. But I wrote out a list of on the recommendations of a psychiatrist of expectations that I had on my husband. And I remember furiously writing out this list. I was like, oh, finally I get to say something, right? I get to write it down and read it out, and then everybody gets to hear it, and then hopefully they'll, try to meet my expectations. And I scribbled on this list for the longest time, and it was a page long. And first of all, just the space that it took up on the page terrified me. I was like, holy shit, I have a lot of expectations on my husband. What the heck? My first thought was, if he had that many expectations on me, I'd be terrified. And then I read them and I thought, these are absolutely ridiculous. Like, nobody can meet these. No one could meet this, this list. And I think that was the whole exercise, to be honest. That was the whole exercise. Hello, Nico.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm doing great today.
You're doing great?
The sun has come out weirdly. It's been very cloudy recently.
Yeah, we've got some sunshine, but we've also got some forest fire smoke. So the sun came up looking rather apocalyptic this morning. I thought I would like to be able to have a camera that could take a picture of it, because it was really phenomenal from the window. But I just know that if I point my camera at it, it's going to look like a orange dot in the sky. So, so I didn't bother taking a photo. But yeah, so we get a lot of summers like this where I live. There's always a forest fire somewhere, and if the wind is right, it blows the smoke and covers up the sun, and then it just feels like the end of the world.
Oh. Yeah, that's the thing. It's very nice to live close to nature. Then the fire starts up. Or close to the sea, but then maybe your house gets flooded.
Yeah. Nature is terrifying, right? Like Rilke said, all angels are terrifying. Yeah. But that was the one point I wanted to make, just going back to what I was talking about earlier. I can't remember where William wrote it in here, something about read some poetry, but I think poetry is actually the solution, like, to our problems. That sounds really broad brush, doesn't it? But it's beauty, and it's poetic relations, which for me, poetic relations are incarnation, where the symbolic and the and matter itself become one, right? And then they are it's that life-giving spirit, right, that God breathed into our nostrils when we were just a lump of clay. That's what poetry is doing. It's blowing life into matter and giving it body, and it becomes alive. And we stand in amazement, which is what I was reading from the Substack that I read. We stand in amaze, right? And we are astounded. And the other thing that comes to my mind too is how George MacDonald said, I'm not here to teach someone. I'm here to wake something up in them. And Hello, Lynn.
Oh my goodness, is it working? Is this working? Do you hear me?
I hear you.
Oh my. Wait a second, my hair's a mess. I didn't want to leave you alone.
Thank you. That's wonderful. It's so nice to see you.
This causes great anxiety, but I didn't want to leave you alone, so I thought I would say hello. Just wanted to say about the sadness. Did I interrupt?
No, go ahead. And Nick, are you okay? What's happening? Nick is, oh, there we go. You were slightly frozen for a minute, Nick. Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay. My sister was really, really sad. 3 days ago, my sister was. And she recently had an eye surgery. And for all my life, I've had eye problems with this eye disease I have. And so she finally had an issue with her eyes. And I'm like, so I was trying to explain to her what it's like having eye disease your whole life. So, you know, being mostly blind, having a disability, and being able to communicate with people who have all their faculties. Sense, not mental, but
senses. All their senses. Yeah.
Right. And I tried to explain to her that the sadness, when you have a disability like a hearing disability, a visual disability, or a huge deficit that other people don't have, trying to communicate or interact with them can be very challenging. And so there's this deep sadness that's there that is really hard to explain. So anyway, so that's what I was thinking about when you was doing that, was that trying to explain this horrible, deep sadness that
Right. And I think the sadness is a kind of loneliness, right? That's when people feel the most sad, is when they feel lonely. Like the worst thing you can do to a human being is ostracize them, push them out of the group. And like, you know, just what you're talking about is a person, like someone with an eye disease, who struggles in a world of people who can see, who's a person who is ostracized out of a group, whether that's the group is voluntarily ostracizing you or involuntarily ostracizing you. You're still outside of it.
Right. You know? People make assumptions that everyone is exactly like them. Mm-hmm. You know, they assume, for example, somebody looking at their phone walking into a pole because they're so fixated on their phone. An outside person might laugh and say, "Oh, that's very funny." But somebody who really can't see, don't see the pole, has no clue, runs into the pole. It's like, you know, oh, yeah. Everyone's assuming that person is sighted, that person, and you just don't have that. And so explaining that to my sister was really, I hope I helped her understand this deep sadness that, you know, that it's just, you don't want to be on the planet anymore and you don't want to fight it. It's like, you just want to end it all. So there's that suicidal thread comes. So that's why, that's one reason why I like Grizz Grimm so much, is because he made a decision that he was not going to kill himself. He was going to be on this planet for a reason. And there just has to be a point where you, as a human being, make a choice that you're going to be on this planet for a reason. And despite being mostly blind, or despite most humans assuming X, Y, and Z. So that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. No, it's true. I mean, like I understand that choice that like Grimm made, you know, that you're going to be here for a reason. But there's I think there's something else attached to that too that you have to come to terms with, really, and that is that you actually deserve to be here. Right? You're not just here to fight against the whatevers, the principalities and powers, even in your own life, but that you actually, this is your home. This is your place. You belong here. You have something to add. And, but that involves loving yourself. And that is often the most difficult thing for people to do. They can love others. But like I've said recently to a friend, I think it's our duty to love ourselves because Jesus died for us. He loved us so much, right?
Okay,
you know,
that is
the old verse, God so loved the world that he gave his only son.
All right. Jordan Peterson says that self-esteem is a shtick.
Oops.
So symbolically believing in Jesus is certainly a way in. So I'm just,
but I don't think loving yourself has anything to do with self-esteem. So, but that's a whole other topic.
That's interesting. That's an interesting.
I noticed here's what I'll say about it is I noticed whenever people talk to me about loving yourself, they went out and spent money on themselves. And I'm like, well, okay, wait a minute. So you do a spa day, or you go out for dinner, or you buy yourself some new clothes, or you take a holiday. That's loving yourself? No, that's transactionalism. That's I'm going to purchase my happiness now, right? How do you love yourself in a way that doesn't cost you money? Because if you're spending money to buy your happiness, you're not finding it.
Oh, I totally agree. Totally agree with that.
Yeah. So I think that in order to love yourself, and this is the thing, you have to love your neighbor as yourself. And so you have to begin to see yourself as your neighbor.
I found it in serving somebody, serving my boyfriend, serving.
Yeah.
Service.
Serving helps. Serving can also be a Band-Aid. But when you begin to see yourself, that person who is in their sadness, right? The person who feels alone, when you begin to see yourself as your neighbor and love yourself the way you would love your neighbor who was in that place, then you've understood what it means to love yourself. And it's also when you can do that for yourself, when you can have compassion on yourself, then you actually can have compassion and love for your neighbor. So like it's very intertwined, which of course that's what incarnation is. It it's intertwined, right? But I did want to read something really quickly because I did mention before that Rilke gave me some good instruction on sadnesses. And he says, where is it here? He says, it seems to me that almost all our sadnesses are moments of tension, which we feel as paralysis because we no longer hear our astonished emotions living, because we are alone with the unfamiliar presence that has entered us, because everything we trust and are used to is for a moment taken away from us, because we stand in the midst of a transition where we cannot remain standing. That is why the sadness passes. The new presence inside us, the presence that has been added, has entered our heart and has gone into its innermost chamber and is no longer even there, is already in our bloodstream. and we don't know what it was. We could easily be made to believe that nothing happened, and yet we have changed, as a house that a guest has entered changes. We can't say who has come. Perhaps we will never know, but many signs indicate that the future enters us in this way in order to be transformed in us long before it happens. And that is why it is so important to be solitary and attentive when one is sad, because the seemingly uneventful and motionless moment when our future steps into us is so much closer to life than that other loud and accidental point of time when it happens to us as if from outside. The quieter we are, the more patient and open we are in our sadnesses, the more deeply and serenely the new presence can enter us, and the more we can make it our own, and the more it becomes our fate. And so, I mean, I have before I read Rilke, I have invited or embraced the sadness, but in a way that probably wasn't completely healthy. But we have to do something with it, right? Because it's heavy. Like it's hard to bear, and we can't ignore it because we drag it around like a ball and chain. But with Rilke's instruction, I've been able to embrace the sadness in a way that gives me a hope for the future, because it's the future that's entering into me, right? It's the guest that changes the way the house is. And so I've been looking at it like that.
Well, that would be for me faith in God. I mean, faith in something higher than myself, certainly. But then if you go too deep into the sadness, you go into psychosis. And
or you write a poem like Rilke. I don't know. I'm a firm believer in a labyrinth, right? That eventually we come out where we came in, where we went in. And for some people,
but then you never step in the same river twice. So
that's right. That's right. That's right. Like, yeah, all the old cones come to life, don't they? So true. Yeah.
It wouldn't be good for there to be a world where bad things are not sad.
Yeah, that's right.
If sadness was a person, then I guess they deserve a place
at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, Nick. Thank you for that. I think that's exactly what Rilke is doing. He's giving it a place at the table, right? And because we want to reject it and we want to get away from it. It's really, like I said, it's heavy and it's hard to bear. Yeah. Yeah. If sadness is a person, or was a person, deserves a place at the table. Amen. Nick, you're a poet. You are.
Nah. You know, for the longest time, I didn't understand poetry. Maybe still I don't, but now at least I'm willing to discover poetry, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You've invited it for dinner. You've given it a place at the table, and that's a start, right? Let's get to know who you are. I think a lot of people struggle with poetry because they don't live in a three-dimensional world anymore. Like the poetic relations the materialism is so strong that it's very difficult to see something that is spirit-filled. You know, George MacDonald says that when we speak poetic language, which for him is the Ursprung, the origin of language is poetry, right? It's when we marry the symbolic to the spirit. So when we speak poetic language, we actually are speaking words of the spirit and not of the flesh. And I mean, when I read that for the first time, I was like, well, that's really opened up that verse for me. Right? And I think it's true. And of course, not all the meaning in poetry it's not, he compares it to a sonata. Like you could have a group of people listening to a sonata, and for them, that sonata is going to conjure up images and feelings that are completely unique to each individual in the room, right? They're all going to have a different experience of that music.
Yeah, I'm remembering a poem. What's the name of that poem that Tolkien liked a lot? Of the where was it? Where is the horse and the rider, something like that? Where is the what's the name of that poem?
And this is whose poem? Tolkien?
No, it's a poem that he liked. It's an Anglo-Saxon poem.
You'll have to read it.
Na 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 na. It went like that.
Yeah. Are you Googling?
Yeah, I'm Googling it. I'm trying to find the name.
Our eyes should kind of hang out just loosely when we Google, and then everyone knows what we're up to.
Is it The Wanderer? Maybe it's The Wanderer. Let's see. I think it's. I tried. There is this thing about music and poetry.
The Wanderer, Nick.
Yeah,
from Upcycle.
That's it. That's it.
Who's it written by?
It's too old. Nobody knows.
Oh, it's too old. Okay, let's read this one. It's probably going to be half a dozen of them.
It kind of fits with the theme about the sadness.
It has to do with the theme of sadness?
Yeah. Where have the horses gone? Where are the riders? Where are the givers of gold? Where are the seats of the feast? Where are the joys of the hall? Yeah, I tried. I once tried to memorize just the sound in Old Anglo-Saxon. Doesn't matter if I don't speak it. Just the sound. I should have kept at it. It would have been a good opportunity to practice Anglo-Saxon.
I'm gonna have to read this poem. I've never even heard of it before.
Yeah, please read it. I've never heard of it either. It just reminds me of the song "The Wanderer" by that.
Yeah.
Song by Dion.
Yeah.
Dion. I don't know this person.
Yeah.
It's before I was born.
The Wanderer.
I'm the Wanderer. Anyway.
Okay, so that's the link. That's the link that I'm on Upcycle. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if I had the right poem here. Let's see here. I probably won't do a good job of it because I haven't read it before. Like, I usually at least read through once before I try reading anything out loud. But how often the lone dweller anticipates some sign this measurer's mercy must, mind carrying along the ocean's windings, stirring rime-chill seas, hands as oars, many long whiles treading the tracks of exile, the way of the world an open book always. Is this the right poem? Because it's not doing da 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 da, as Nick said. Nick, if you're listening, do I have the right poem? So spoke the earth stepper, a memorial of miseries, slaughter of the wrathful, crumbling of kinsmen. Often every daybreak. Is this it, Nick? Am I reading the right poem?
I think so. Continue. It has like different parts, different moods.
Okay.
The part I remember was the one that has all of those question marks.
Question marks. Okay. I don't even see that here.
It's more about the end of the poem.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, I see it now. Okay, well, I'll try to make my way through this fairly quickly. It's not that long. I mean, it's long, but it's not that long. Well, actually, how long is it? Let's just be sure.
115 lines, I think.
Yeah, okay, it's not too bad. Oops. All right. Often every daybreak alone I must bewail my cares. There's now no one living to whom I dare mumble my mind's understanding. I know as truth that it's seen suitable for anyone to bind fast their spirit's closet, hold on to the hoards, think whatever. Can a weary mind weather the shitstorm? I think not. Can a roiling heart set itself free? I don't think so. So often those hustling for the wind must clamp down grim mindings in their coffer, just as I ought fetter my inborn conceit. Often wounded, wanting where I know, kindred pulled away, how many winters now? I shrouded my giver in dark earth, and wended away worrisome, weather watching, the wrathful waves, half hull wretched, seeking a center, far or near, where they might be found, in some mead hall, who knows of my kind, willing to adopt a friendless me, though they be joyful enough. The well-traveled know how slicing sorrow can be by one's side. Short a struggle, friend. Short a struggle, friend, however dear. The ways of wandering wind him round, not even a wire of wound gold, a frigid fastness, hardly any fruits of the fold. This one lists the hall lads' swilling rings, giver drenched in youngsome days, in both furnishing and feasting, joys all flown, vanished all away. Therefore one knows who long forgoes the friendly words of their first. When sleep and sorrow stand together, clutching at the crestfallen alone, somehow seems that somewhere inside, this one enwraps his lord and kisses his lord, and laps both hands and head on his knee, when once upon a year, blurry in time now, one thrived by the throne, too soon rousing, a friendless, singular, seeing all around a fallowness of waves. Seabirds bathing, fanning their feathers, ice and snow hurtling, heaved up with hail. So heavy, and heavier the hurt in heart, harrowing for the lost. Sorrow made new, whenever recalling pervades the mind. Greeting kindred joyfully, drinking in the look of them, fellowable and fathoming, they always swim away. Gull's ghost call, I don't know their tongue too well, much of their comfort weird. Worrying made new to that one who must send more and more every day, a bleary soul back across the binding of waves. Therefore I cannot wonder across this world why my mind does not muster in the murk, when I ponder, pervading all the lives of humans, how suddenly they abandon their halls, proud princes and young. Right here in the middle, it fumbles and falls every day. No one can be wise before earning their lot of winters. in this world. The wise one, they stay patient, not too heart-heated, not so hasty to harp, not too weak-armed or too wan-headed, nor too fearful, nor too fey, nor too fee-felching, and never tripping the tongue too much before it trips them. That one bides their moment to make brag, until the inner fire seizes its moment clearly to where their secret self veers them. Whose wise must foreken how ghostly it has been, when the world and its things stand wasted, like you find here and there in this middle space now. Their walls totter, wailed around by winds, gnashed by frost, the buildings snow-lapped, the wine halls molder, their wielder lies washed clean of joys, his peerage all perished, proud by the wall. War ravaged a bunch, ferried along the fourth way. Others a raptor ravished over lofty seas. This one the hoary wolf broke in its banes. The last a brother gravelled in the ground. Tears as war mask. That's the way it goes. The shaper mills middle earth to waste, until they stand empty, the giant's work and ancient, drained of the dreams and joys of its dwellers. Wow, that's an amazing little stanza. I'm going to read that again. That's the way it goes. The shaper, that's a capital S, shaper, mills middle earth to waste until they stand empty, the giant's work and ancient, drained of the dreams and joys of its dwellers. The one wisely regards this wallstead, deliberates a darkened existence, aged in spirit, often remembering from afar many war slaughterings, and speaks these words. Where has the horse gone? Where are my kindred? Where is the giver of treasure? Where are the benches to bear us? Joys of the hall to bring us together? No more the bright goblet. All gone the mailed warrior. Lost for good the pride of princes. How the space of years has spread, growing gloomy beneath the night helm, as if it never was. Tracks of the beloved multitude, all that remains, walls wondrous tall, serpents seething, thanes stolen, pillaged by ashen foes, gear glutting for slaughter. We know this world's way, and the storms still batter these stony cliffs. The tumbling snows stumble upon the earth, the clash of winter when darkness descends. Night shadows benighten, sent down from the north, raw showers of ice. Who doesn't hate humanity? All shot through in misery in earthly realms, fortune's turns the world under sky. Here the cash was alone. Your friends were alone. Anyone at all alone. Your family only ever alone. And it's a loan, Loan. And this whole foundation of the earth wastes away. So the wise one, you don't hear him at all. Sitting apart, reading their own runes. It's better to clutch at your counsel. You ought never manifest your miseries, not too quickly where they well, unless the balm is clear beforehand. Keep whittling at your courage. It will be well for those who seek the favor, the comfort from our Father in heaven, where a battlement bulwarks us all. Wow. That is written, I think, in the 10th century, right?
Yeah. It's from the...
I can imagine someone writing
10th.
that. Yeah, I can imagine. I just finished watching the series, what's it called? The Last Kingdom. I watched it again. Like, it's an old series, and I watched it when it first came out, but then I just went through it again because I'm knitting a sweater, so I'm just sitting for hours. And I'm like, I've got all these scenes because it's like one friggin' battle after another, and there's all these raids on these little villages, and they're just dragging women out by their hair and slashing their throats and killing their children in front of them. And I'm thinking of just all of the pain and agony that that, because I'm hearing a lot of that moment in time in the poem, the warriors, the drinking, the warring, the feasting, the friends that aren't your friends, the traitors, the betrayal, but doesn't it sound so modern? Like, this is something we all know.
That's the thing. You guys have such great poetry. There really isn't something like that in, let's say, Latin poetry. It's such good stuff, and it's very old stuff too.
It is very old, yeah. Yeah.
By reading that, you're connecting to people who lived more than 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. You're touching the consciousness of something very, very ancient, right? But then at the same time, it's also very contemporary because it's the human condition. So, like, I don't know, for myself personally, I always found it hubristic to talk about modernity as something unique for that reason. I know that we have unique problems. I know that we have unique technology. I know that we have unique privileges. But as far as the human condition goes, we still suffer with the same pain that someone in the 10th century did. And so we're going to approach all of this technology and privilege and with that same heart and soul, the heart and soul of a human being, and it's going to penetrate into us in the same way, it's just a different medium, right? But we're going to feel all those feelings. It might not be a spear, it might not be a blade, it might be a screen.
Yeah. The thing that disabused me of that, it's this modern thing of I did the thing. It's this thing about progress, the new things coming. We're in the new age. It's sort of the new. And one of the things that can disabuse a person from that is studying history, but more than studying history, when you find like these little human things. There was this village in Egypt where the people who built the tombs for the pharaohs lived. These were special crafters. They have specialized knowledge for making these tombs. And they also had to be trusted because if they revealed the location of the tombs, they would get they could get sacked by robbers.
Right.
So they built this village in a place that was very inaccessible, and they didn't have access to water. So the pharaohs had to always send people in there to bring them water. And they tried to make a well, but they never got water from it. So it just ended up being like a huge hole in the ground. So apparently, people in that village would grab like broken pieces of pottery, and they would write something they were thinking about, and then throw it in the well.
Mm-hmm.
And now we found the well with all those writings.
Oh wow!
And you can get an idea of what people in Egypt thousands of years ago were thinking.
That's amazing.
And it's all, soap opera stuff. It's he doesn't like me. Why doesn't he like me? It's stuff like that. It's people complaining about their relations. It's things like that they were frustrated about, and
right.
It's so weird because it's in ancient Egyptian.
Yeah. Well, that's the hubris that comes with the idea that we're unique, right? Is that people that came before us were just evolutionarily, behind, right? Which means that they weren't like us. They didn't think like us. They didn't have emotions like this. That didn't bother them to kill someone, or sacrifice their children. They didn't care. Of course they did, right? And I mean, if in 1,000 years people look back at the First and Second World War, they could say the same thing. Didn't bother them to kill someone. Didn't bother them to sacrifice their children. Of course it did, but something motivated it. Something else, right?
I just want to make a note. We're still sacrificing children. Just gotta say that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
to the materialist scientific person, that's called abortion. All right.
Yeah.
So
no, it's true.
So had to interject. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, and let's call a spade a spade. Right? That's right. That's why poetry is so important. And I think it was Neil that talked about beauty earlier, and he was talking about thinking about something beautiful, right? Or moving towards something from your childhood that drew you in, because that's what beauty does. It draws you into truth and goodness. And that is, the beautiful, the true and the good are one thing, and they are a person. And when we can see them as one thing, then Ron, do you have music going on?
Oh, not anymore. Sorry.
I mean, it was kind of nice, but
it's the Grateful Dead live. Sorry, gone.
But here's the thing about a person. If we want to, transcribe beauty, truth, and goodness onto them, like as, the Word made flesh, let's say, we can already tell just by those 3 words how complex the person actually is, right? And I don't think people have ever changed. I watched there's a woman who wrote a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, and she gave a talk a few years ago. She's quite elderly, and she was talking about cave paintings and how, because she's an artist, right? She teaches artists, and she was talking about how intimate the cave paintings were. Like, they didn't just depict something. There was an emotional attachment to the experience of hunting those animals or seeing those animals, or respecting those animals, for the kind of nurture that they afforded them, right? Because they were alive because of the animals. And I think everybody had a real sense of that. We don't have those kind of connections anymore, because we're so abstracted away from the source of our life. Like, we really, really are. We don't kill animals. We buy them wrapped in plastic in the grocery store.
Yeah. I have noticed techniques in
Dawn,
the line work.
Sorry, I just want to say something. Dawn, I am so bugged by it too. I just have to say out loud. It's this whole current boomerality project is essentially doing the same thing. It's because she commented here, but we don't have to go that far back to see us making the same mistake, reducing millions of people to a category and removing their humanity. That's right. And and Nick, I want you to continue your thought after this, but I'll just say about the problem is not. The problem is in the for some reason people have a necessity, and this I think is more of a modern problem, which developed over hundreds of years. They have a need for categories because when they can categorize things, then they think, it's kind of like before you go on a camping trip, you lay out all your stuff. And then you think that if you put it all in the bag, nothing bad will happen because you have everything you need. Okay? And that's what categories are for. They're for laying out your stuff so that you can figure out which one of these things is responsible for all my pain. And then you can nail your pain to something in that array of categories. But meanwhile, like I said earlier, like truth, goodness, and beauty is a person.
Mm-hmm.
There is no category. Like, find a category for that.
Can I say something to that?
Yes.
Okay. That's actually why I wanted to get on. In the Bible, it describes two different things. In hell, there is weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Yeah.
And so that's separation from God, however you want to look at it. And then with the cherubim, who are in the presence of God always, and all they do is cry, holy, holy, holy.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, oh, wait a second, there it is. And this is my opinion, and I'm throwing it out there. The closer you get to God and understand what's going on, no matter what, you're just crying holy.
Yeah, there's not much more to say, right?
Right. But when you're away from that understanding and from that experience, that person, that's when there ain't nothing good. And there's just weeping and gnashing of teeth. So
yeah,
especially with Tim, because I like Tim. If you're out there watching, dude, like I like him a lot. He's fun. But it reminds me of before I had an encounter with God, I was miserable. I had everything physically. I had all my stuff laid out. I had my camping gear assembled, and I was still miserable. But then when I met him and got into his presence, I'm like,
yeah, because
okay.
you went from things that you thought that your salvation was in the thing, but
Right.
it's not. It's in a person, and there's no presence with a thing. There's only presence with a person, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
no, that's it.
Hi, Matthew.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I just wanted to pop in. I got to get to the Tux Airbnb here shortly and get all tuxed up. So I just wanted to drop in.
You doing the wedding today?
Yes, today's the day.
Awesome.
That
sounds like fun. And then after that, it's Northwestuary?
Yes, and after I'm staying with Jacob for a couple days, and yes, it's a very fun couple weeks. I'm not getting married, Ron. It's my brother.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, thank you. He's a good man. He found him a good woman, and she picked a great venue. I can't wait to share all the pictures on Discord and stuff. You guys are gonna flip.
I could see some nice trees in the background there.
Yes, it's the hotel. Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. I hope you have a really, well, I know you will. You'll be all pumped up after all this.
Hey, they're calling me already. I gotta go. I love you guys.
Bye, Matthew.
Congrats.
Okay, Nick, you had a thought before I interrupted you about the boomerality thing. I just wanted to be in solidarity with Dawn.
Yeah, it wasn't about the boomerality thing. It was about something else.
Yeah. Let's go away from boomerality. Let's move on.
Let me see if I can switch to the other camera. Can I? No, there is no option in StreamYard to switch to another camera.
Yeah.
There's this thing I've noticed in Greek pottery, I guess. And let me see if I can. Can you see that?
Yeah.
This stuff could have been made today in a comic book.
Hang on.
The line work. Look at this hand, for example.
Yeah.
It's all loose. It's done loosely. Look at this, and then it finished there. Then what? And then here and here.
Yeah.
It's loose.
Yeah.
The hand is plain. It's able to move quickly and loosely. It's very expressive. I have found in a few different places that the skill of the craftsman was just like it is today.
Yes.
This kind of loose style, it doesn't seem for us today, or at least in that it was a thing of the past, but it actually was, and I've noticed that it's often not in the highest of places. People had to make a lot of pottery, and the pottery needed some drawings on them. So I imagine there was a workshop somewhere, and people were like really working really fast, trying to keep up with demand.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing that we're very used to now, and it would seem like it wasn't something that people knew back then, but actually they were. So there is all of this history of art, and the way it's laid out, it has this shape of, it started really bad and then it kept improving,
right?
And it doesn't look like that at all.
No, and actually, regarding those cave paintings, this woman was saying that no one could make those cave paintings the way that they're like, and it's not the primitiveness of them, it's the poetic relation of those cave paintings. It's the experience of the painter to the painting, right? To the experience of hunting the animals or whatever the case might be. That's all poured out onto the cave wall. And so because we have, we don't have that life, it doesn't mean anything to us. We don't have the ability to actually replicate that kind of painting. I'm not an art critic, so I don't know all the terms she used, but she explained herself quite well as to why, what techniques, what's being said, how it's being expressed. And the fact of the matter was, we can't do that. That it's beyond our comprehension to be. So actually, they were way better than a lot of the art that we're looking at today, right?
And it was new technology. It was brand new.
Well, and what was new?
The painting? Well, just art in itself.
It's hard to say. I mean, they're also working with very primitive tools and very primitive, like they had to figure out how to make the dyes, like how to make the, and they stayed on the walls for tens of thousands of years.
Well, that's what I mean. New technology, like just
now all our stuff is just steaming in a landfill somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, We have made progress, right? That's what we call progress.
So are we getting back to, I don't want to say the ancients because that sounds so whatever, but it's almost like rediscovering.
Well, this is, it's interesting. I'm watching this with interest because Barfield talks about the fact that we have, we came out of an original participation, which would have been like that real ancient mindset where everything was married together. Everything, breath, wind, and spirit was all the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I breathed out, I breathed out my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
If I met a wind on the trail, I was being assailed by a spirit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And those things were not distinct in anyone's mind. And so you're swimming in this soup of poetic relations.
Right. Yes.
But then we go through this period of withdrawal where we become abstracted from the spirit, right? And then Jesus shows up and he makes, what does he do? He's the Word made flesh.
Right.
What is that? What is that? That is poetic relations. That is when matter becomes spirited. Right?
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. Right.
And then the final outcome is what Barfield calls final participation, where you can marry the experience of withdrawal to the original participation. So the experience of withdrawal is scholasticism, knowledge, philosophy. It's all the inward quasi-narcissistic reflection in the pool, right? But he doesn't say that we shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
He says we have to get through it. Because what we do when we get to the other side is we marry that original participation to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I see this as, I actually see that as the same idea that Douglas Harding uses when he talks about marrying the sage to the child. Right? The sage, the older person, the person who's lived their entire life and has had to go through, because these are fractal journeys, right? So we make these journeys personally and communally and nationally and globally and, all the rest of it. And so when we get to the so-called end, right? Then we can go back to that age of innocence and we can marry the sage, the wisdom, to the innocence. And that is, in Barfield's terms, final participation, where you can, with a sense of wonder, re-examine the things that Tim is talking about. Reasonable, rational.
Right.
Okay. Because, and here's the thing, God gave us reason. Right. And I've heard rationality described as a ladder that we climb out of rationality with, right? We use rationality is the rungs of the ladder that takes us out. And I don't know if you've ever seen there's an ancient, I don't remember what the name of it is. It's a photo of a guy peeking through like the Earth's atmosphere into the stars. That picture. Well, you climb the rungs of rationality to irrationality. And Matthias Desmet describes this really well when he uses chaos theory as an example, right? Chaos theory, like science used the rungs of rationality to discover that chaos theory is irrational. Right? There's an irrational, like the ultimate pattern is not something that we can perceive. It appears irrational to us, right?
All right. Well, I am going to go attend to my life, my physical life.
So, Lynn, thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome. Yeah, I don't like to go on camera, so.
Bye, Lynn.
I'm so glad you had the courage.
It was a big thing. Have a great day. Happy Sabbath.
Bye, Lynn.
Happy Sabbath.
You too.
The real Sabbath, Saturday.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Sherry, I got a question for you.
Mm.
Well, I don't want to. Can I jump in on this?
Yeah.
Okay. So Jesus, in my thought, is that sage child.
Yes. Well, he talks about this. He says, unless you become like a little child,
Right.
you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And I had a thought when Nick was talking earlier about, always I don't know if that's exactly what Nick had in mind, but I had the image of perpetual growth. Like, we live in a world that thinks that now you can't just be satisfied with what you have. You've got to grow it, right? And so that's what's got us into the place that we're in, right? Like, where stockholders now need money. So if they need money, we have to grow. We have to just keep growing and growing and growing until it's like blowing up a balloon till it bursts. That's basically what I see in my mind. Oh shoot! Now I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah.
It's
So
because
I just wait before I forget again. So to me, this is what kingdom building is. It's this perpetual growth, right? So in historically speaking, you had these kings who wanted to build their kingdoms, and so they went out and in order to build your kingdom, you had to grow it, and so you had to conquer, you had to kill, you had to convert, right? We do all that metaphorically now. We haven't stopped doing it. We're constantly kingdom building, and kingdom building is this idea that something has to, in order for something to be alive, it perpetually grows, right? Well, plants don't perpetually grow. They have a Sabbath rest. It's called winter.
Okay.
I mean, they grow, but trees grow. They'll grow, but they reach a certain height, and that's it. And then there's other plants that every year they just reseed themselves. They die, and their children grow the next year, But here's the thing with this kingdom building. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. So where does this perpetual growth need to happen? Yeah. That's what I think.
I would have to agree with you, because the kingdom, it is, well, the armor of God and the whole Bible, in my opinion, is all about the mind and emotions.
Yes, I think so too.
And so the growth can come and does come through by his Spirit that manifests love in us and with us.
Yeah.
And that's what makes all of it happen. And
right. I mean, let's say this though, Ron. Like, I believe that the Bible is talking about our for lack of a better term, I don't really like it, but because it sounds really reductionist, but it's our psychology, right?
Yes,
our mind, mind and our heart.
Okay.
But here's the thing about that. It's not just that, because we are, like George MacDonald said, the world turned the human being. Let me get this right now. I always mix it up. The world is the human being turned inside out.
I've never heard that.
This is the quote from George MacDonald.
Okay.
Right? And so we take from the natural world to construct our language and our thoughts, right? Like, he has this example where he'll say a man is, doing something, and suddenly there stands his thought before him. We've all had that experience. Suddenly we have a thought. We're like, where did that come from? Right? And then he says, God thought it before him, right? And he's pointing at the natural world, which inspires us to thought, which, because the forms, the trees, the flowers, the animals all contain a meaning that God imbued them with. They provoke thought.
Oh, okay.
So they are the thoughts of God, and they end up becoming our thoughts, right? So suddenly there stands the man's thought before him. And
that goes back to your mountain. The good teacher.
That's right.
Oh, by the way, I love that.
Sorry. That was not mine. That was
well, but you read it, so
yeah.
I'm just saying, I like that part of that. So, okay, I'm getting you. The world is the person turned inside out.
Right. So the psychology when we read scripture and we hear it as a psychology of our own heart and mind, we're hearing that correctly, but it's also the whole world. Right. Okay. So it's going to, all those things that are true for us are going to be true for the world around us. And this is why when Nick reads a poem from the 10th century, it affects him personally, because we are the world. The world is us turned inside out, right? And so these things are always true, and to get back to Neil's thing, and I know I'm not speaking I'm not a propositional, I can't lay out my arguments, but this is why beauty will save the world, right? And that happens to be poetic relations, in my opinion.
Yeah. So. God didn't go 1 + 1 = 2, let there be light. That's nothing against math, logic, reason, and all that. But what I've experienced is his love. And there's no math involved in experiencing it, but it doesn't mean math isn't valuable. Maybe even in expressing it eventually.
Well, I think math it's a language of intelligibility, pattern recognition. I'm not a mathematician. I hate math. I've never understood math. But I do have a sense that math is a language.
Okay.
And that
right.
But the problem doesn't lie with math. The problem lies with the way we perceive math.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's what I think.
I'm not expressing myself quite clearly.
No, but I get what you're getting at. I have a sense of what you're getting at.
I want to be careful because I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, Marcus, I think so too. Like, what changed my mind? I mean, I had a terrible personal relationship to math because not a math person.
Yeah,
I watched A Beautiful Mind.
Right.
And I started to realize that math is actually a language that I just don't understand. I can't read.
Right? I repent. I'm sorry to all the math people. I was wrong. I take it all back.
But like everything, we like to flatten and one-dimensionalize it all,
Well, I just was trying to agree with you and trying to figure out. There seems to be. You were talking about the psychology and what is the word that you used? Because I want to get you back on track.
I was just talking about how like you were saying that the Bible was about the psychology of the human being, right?
Yes, right. It's the mind and heart.
I guess the easiest way to express that for me would be to say that this is my heaven and this is my earth. But there is also a heaven and an earth, right? So
that reminds me of John.
It's a very large cosmos that we're a part of.
Indeed.
And that's why all of it has to be redeemed.
Yeah, right.
It's true. If you redeem humanity, you redeem the whole cosmos, because we are, right? The world is the human being turned inside out.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, guys, I've got my last class with Michael Martin. We're doing this, Christendom or Europe? It's really interesting. I read it last night, and by Novalis. He starts out with this like utopian view of this Christian kingdom, you know, and then it just all goes to shit, as we know. Just goes, it like a windshield on a car. It just goes right to a million people.
Oh.
Which is why you can't really condemn any one group of people for it's human.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? It's very human to do these things. And I think that's what that's kind of what I was pointing at when I was talking about kingdom building and this propensity for growth, right? And conversionism. Like conversionism has to be involved in kingdom building, because you can't build a kingdom if you haven't converted somebody to your ideology, whatever it might be. But the kingdom of God is within you, Jesus said, right? And so I think, bless you. Nick just blew his spirit out to bless him quick.
Thank you.
If the kingdom of God is within you, and you work on the growth of the kingdom within you, then you literally become the building block of the kingdom itself without even knowing it.
Right.
Which is kind of what Novalis is talking about in this Christendom argument. So I unfortunately have to go because I got to go run and do some chores before I.
Oh, was fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. I'm glad I jumped on. I was super tired this morning, but I just really felt like I wanted to read that bit from Eugene, so that Tim could hear it. But I hope he did.
We'll track him down and force him to listen.
We'll build our kingdom. No, we won't do that.
All right, I'm gonna take off. It was fun. See you again, guys.
Okay.
Bye, Ron. Thanks for joining. Bye, Nick. Thanks, everybody else.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.